Hello, everyone. Thank you once again for joining the VGRS grant recipient trainings. Today's session, it follows the same rules as yesterday. This session is being recorded. We request that if you have any AI meeting bots that have joined you on this call, that you disengage them as they violate DOL meeting policies. If you have any questions or comments, we request that you put them in the chat for discussion. And if they are relevant to what we're currently showing, we will attempt to bring it up in the training call. If not, we will try to answer your question in the chat. And if we do not get to that, it will be answered within a Q&A document that will be available after these trainings are done. Please contact your GOTR for all policy-related questions. The links to the slide deck, the recordings for each training session, and the Q&A document will be published on the VETS Grantee Reporting System page on the DOL website by the week of August 25th to the 29th. We are on day 2 today. Let me open that up. So our agenda for day 2 is that we're going to go into the grantee organization in a more detailed review. So in the grantee organization, this is a record type, and we have the summary dashboard and the grantee organization members list. Both of these two are modules. We may call them interchangeably other things, but they are both module subsections of a record and focus on specific items. And beyond that, we also have our grant record management, and we will be going over this in great detail as well. Grant records are a record type. We have our summary module, our goals module, budget module, personnel, grantee user access, participants, outcomes, demographic summary, performance report, and history modules to go over. When we're in the participants module, we will go over both the creating a new participant and enrollment in great detail. And we have 2 examples that we can go along together. So with that, we're going to go ahead into our grantee organization record. So grantee organization records, these are records that are created by VET staff. The summary dashboard includes basic information about the organization. This is items such as the identifiers, which are the organization name, the organization's unique identity identifier, aka the UEI, the employer identification number, the EIN, and organization type. We have our contacts, which were the phone numbers and emails, if you recall from yesterday, the address for our grantee organization, and any additional notes that your GOTR may have provided. So as grantee staff users, you can only see the grant organization record if you have been assigned to that organization. So I will only be limited to, in this demonstration, to my Star Wars related organization, while all other organizations in the system will be blocked from my view because I am not a member of those organizations. We are going to go to our, hold on a second, which one is it? No, I have too many. There you go. We're going to go to here. I wanted to show you guys how it is logging into login.gov beyond that creation from yesterday, because we didn't see that either. But this does correspond to that. So say I just got the email about being accepted. I can go ahead and click the link that is provided here. So you see how it has that sign in equals login.gov. So it's going to redirect me. I don't have to worry about the login page on the DOL CMP website. I'm going to go ahead and type in my email address for this training at gmail.com, my password, 23, and then the backup code. And once again, we had gone over this. You need a authentication method, and I greatly suggest you do not use backup codes unless it's your secondary one. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that, and it just redirects you to the website. So from here, as a grantee user, I can see my organization name here with my grants to confirm that this is my organization. That is correct, but we can go to it by going to our user profile and then our grantee organizations. So I'm just going to go ahead and click that. And you can see I am in my grantee organization record. This is the record for Alliance to Restore the Republic, Department of Veterans Affairs. We got our UEI, we have our EIN, our organization type, and the 2 forms of contact that we have provided at the time of application, at the HVRP application process. So, and that happened to just be a phone number and an email, and that is what's shown along with the legal address provided at that time. So in our additional information, we do have the fax number recorded, and just that this is a staff, or actually I should say grantee staff training record. So that is what the summary dashboard covers. It's very high level because the purpose of this application is the performance aspect. We're not grant solutions, and we don't have too much details being captured here because it's not necessary. But we are going to go into the grantee organization members. This is probably the most important part about your grantee organization for you as a user. Should you need to, especially if there's turnover in your organization, once in a while, do try to check into your grantee organization members list, and you can see who would need to be removed, and you can inform your GOATer of that. Do note that if you have a national size organization, that you may see users that are not related to your grant here, and so be mindful of that. Only look for the ones related to your grant that need to be removed. But that is one of the many uses that you can have for this list, just to track who does have system access, and maybe have them request appropriate grant access if they don't have the grant access as well. And that is actually it for the grantee organization, because you can see this. I can only see this because I've been added. If Jay went ahead and removed me from here, she would have to remove me from the grants first, but then I would lose all access to this page and both these pages. And that is it for the grantee organization record. Next is our grant record management. This is the grant record is created by vet staff. However, as grantee users, you have been provisioned access to the grant. You only if you've been provisioned access to the grant will you be able to view the grant. Vet staff, as long as they have system access, they can view any grant. It helps them work if they need to work beyond their usual region or state. While as grantee users, it's a right to know basis. Like if you need that access, that's when you have it. So grantee staff, with grant access, you can edit the budget, personnel, specifically the staff actual percentage of time, the participants, and performance report modules. Vet staff can edit the summary, goals, budget, personnel, specifically the position approved percentage of time and the positions, along with the grantee user access modules. There are a few additional modules beyond those listed, and we will go through those. So in the grant summary dashboard, we have just the high level grant information that we need associated with the grant, especially that can help with the performance aspect. So those are the identifiers, our assignments, the award information, the service delivery areas, and this lists the grants approved states or territory and the county or county equivalents where participants are being served. The entries feed the service location drop-down options in the enrollments module. So we'll see that more when we get to the enrollments module and begin our enrollment. But for now, that is just a thing to know. The service delivery area works hand in hand with the enrollments module. So we do have an additional information section, and then we have our statuses, which can show active, terminated, closed, and the standard or high risk. So only vet staff can update this module's information. This includes the ability to report a grant's termination, update the grant's high-risk status, or delete a grant record. So we are going to go back to our grant where, sorry. Okay, so now we are back on the application. I'm just going to go to the home page so I can open one of my grant records. For the meantime, I'm just going to open our 2025 grant. So once again, this is our summary dashboard. We have our identifiers, so that is the grant number and the short grant number. And these are our tooltips. As we discussed slightly before, is just short help text, so you understand what the field and the information being provided is. So in this case, the grant number, this was instructions for the vet staff creating this, that they should enter only the core grant number, which excludes all the hyphenations. So therefore, 2022 without a dash, A, 55, so forth. And then a short grant number, it just explains this is the second half, the 6 digits of the grant number used to more quickly reference the grant. So, and then in our assignment section, we have our region and our assigned coder. Our award information has our grantee organization link. So this is another way that I can access my grantee organization. If, say, I saw one of my staff that was supposed to have access to this grant didn't, I can also just go here to confirm they have that grantee organization access and reach out to my coder accordingly and inform them, hey, they have one, not both. Please adjust. In our award information, we also have our initial award year. This plays a very important part, and I didn't show, technically I showed it, but we didn't go over it, and I will go over it in today's sessions. That the initial award year does impact all of the columns that have the pop quarters, and we can see that as we go through once we get to the goals module budget. It also impacts personnel and outcomes, and we'll see those. We have our UEI from our organization, our population.
Hi, Katira.
Yes.
I'm sorry to stop you, but I see in the chat that there are some AI assisted links appears.
There's AI. There's AI in the call.
Yeah, I mean in the chat I see that AI assistant help taking people notes. So I'm not sure if we would need to get rid of.
Put those out. Yeah, as mentioned at the start of this call, no AI is allowed because that, sorry, let me bring it back up. Where is it? You need to disengage all your AI bots, be it meeting or otherwise. Where is the slide? If that is you,
first slide.
Yeah, I'm like struggling to open it, but yes, if you have your AI bot on, please shut them down immediately.
They've been removed from the meeting, Kat.
Thank you. Let me just save my spot with the deck, and then I'll go back to our grant record right here. Okay, so thank you. Okay, so in our grant record, we also have our population category. So in this case, we're not any specialized population categories, just a general HVRP, but there are also the homeless, veterans with family. I don't remember. It's something family and women's, and then the IBTP one as well. Those are additional options. And vet staff, or even yourself in the search page, you can categorize and set up the filter should you be working at an organization that has multiple grants and has different population categories. You are able to do so. We have our initial award year, we have our requested funding amounts, and this is just a table that sums up at the end. So our all three pop or overall period of performance total is this, while each year we request the same amount. For the SDAs, the service delivery areas, we have this really cool, I would say, setup. So, like, first off, you are able to confirm your own PIPS codes with this link. Like, we have this tooltip here just so one can go and confirm should something look odd. Like, say, Virginia is actually 50, not 51. You can confirm it and then let your coder know. Hopefully, there are no such errors. We're pretty meticulous with these, so hopefully you don't see those, but that is something you can do should there be a reason to confirm them. But you can see we have these boxes per state, so, or state or territory. So for, in this case, this is Virginia, and then we have this table below it that lists every county and the related associated FIPS code. We also have the ability to list all congressional districts. I was too lazy to see what the districts were for all of these areas, even though I live not too far from here. So that's why you see nothing here. But in your grants, I'm sure staff was far lazier than I was. But for the sake of training, we are going simple. And then for the sake of this training, I wanted to show you guys a grant that had two different service delivery areas. So we do have the Virginia state, and we also have the Maryland state, and we have a few counties listed, no congressional districts, but we will be sure that prod is not like that. And once again, you're not going to see it now. It's going to be quite a few modules from now, but once we get to participants and we're entering the enrollments, you will see how they correlate and how it is important to confirm that your SDAs are correct should they not be when you're entering an enrollment, because it can impact what you can list. And then lastly, it's our additional information section. It's just notes. And for this instance, we do not have any, so nothing to worry about. Or in general, just nothing. It's probably nothing to worry about in general. I believe starting this year for all the PY 2025 grants, they started inputting the service delivery addresses here. So service delivery address, the address that you're performing service at, here is what I believe is happening in prod. I could be wrong on that, but that is.
You are correct.
Okay. I was like, am I making that up? I could have sworn I've seen it. Thank you. Thank you for that confirmation. Okay, so that is it for the summary. Oh no, it's not it for the summary. We do once again have our statuses here because this is a brand new grant, and it is being used for that training purposes. We're not going to have it terminated, but if it is terminated, it would be listed here. If it was closed, it would be listed here. And technically, we actually may be able to see it change tomorrow when we do our performance report for our other grant that we're using for training purposes. So maybe it's not so bad to just preemptively state that. But that is it for the summary dashboard. Not anything you can control, nothing in our related action area, so no related action to perform. It's just a view only, but you do have tooltips should you be confused. Why is there a short grant number? What is it exactly? And so forth. You do have some explanation text and you can explore those. Like, should you not be aware of what a PIPS code, CSA, CBSA, or COC number are, you do have the references. Okay, that is it for this. Let me bring our deck back. We are jumping into the very next module. That is the goals module. This is much more important because this actually impacts your scores. So the goals module provides you a period of performance view of all planned goals, chart measures within multiple tables split by category. Each category has its own Learn More feature to better understand the measures listed. Only vet staff can update this module. Grantee staff can view but not edit the goals module. And as grantee staff, should you have an issue with this module, you can reach out to your coder. They are the first line to know anything that is incorrect. So in this case, in our brand new grant, I made it manageable to give us some ease, but this is our enrollments. As the slide had mentioned, each of these categories, we have categories for each of our goals. We have our enrollments goals, we have our exits goals, placements, and our follow-ups. So each of these categories have their own Learn More feature, and we've gone over it yesterday. We're going to go over it a little bit more in greater detail today. You can click this Learn More feature for any page that has it, and it will open up typically under that Learn More. So in this case, this is technically supposed to be the same line as the table, so it comes up under the table. And it gives you a little header to explain what it is that it's going to explain. So understanding goals. So you're in the goals module, you're specifically looking at the Learn More for enrollments. So in the enrollment section, we have two measures, and therefore we have both of these measures explained here. And you can see we have this, what is it called? Wow, I'm forgetting basic browser, but we have this so you can browse, or you can, scroll down. There you go, scroll bar. And you can scroll down to read more. It's not just limited, so just make sure you do check if it does have the ability to scroll and it has more information. And you can see we have our number of participants enrolled, and then this explanation of it. So in this case, a participant should be recorded as having been enrolled when an intake form has been completed and services, referral, and/or employment has been received through the program. This will be an unduplicated count over the performance period, i.e. each participant is recorded only once, regardless of the number of times they received assistance. The exception to this rule is re-enrollment, which occurs when a participant exits and returns more than 90 days after exit, and the grantee chooses to re-enroll the participant, assuming HVRP eligibility criteria is met. So it gives you necessary information should you be confused or unaware of what a measure is. It does that for most of them. Some of them do not have it, especially in the goals module, but that's only because they're pretty self-explanatory. But here we are, exits. You can click to learn more. You can see more about the exits and what explains how for what a participant must be exited for. And you can see this does have the scroll bar. We keep going down. You can go ahead and click X on them, or you can keep them open. I think you can potentially have more than one open at once. Yeah, you can keep them open if wanted. So for placements, we can go ahead and do that as well. And you can see there's a few less here, but I think it's related to what can be inputted and the rest are calculated. And then in follow-up, same thing. I can open that, I can review if needed, and so forth. So if you recall, on the summary dashboard page, I mentioned how the initial award year played a part for all the tables we have throughout the grant record, and you can note that here already. So in our tables, most of them typically span, I believe all of them span pop quarter 1 through pop quarter 12. So that is pretty self-explanatory, but it's because of these dynamic headers right below that, the lines right below. So we have PY program year 2025 quarter 1 listed. So we have all 4 of PY1, all 4 of PY2, and all 4 of PY3 listed. And it's that dynamic, it's a dynamic change based off of whatever your initial award year is. So we can, if we were to compare with our 2022 grant, it would show you PY22 quarter 1, PY23 quarter 1, and then PY24 quarter 1. And we'll also see that in budget, we'll see that in personnel, we'll see that in outcomes, non-participants, because the tables are different. But it does help you track. If you prefer tracking at the yearly basis, that's what you can do, or you can just see the overall quarter from quarter 1 to 12. Okay, so that, let's see with the goals module. Next we have our budget module. So the budget module provides you a period of performance view of all the budget related measures. Measures are split between planned and actual categories. Each category has its own Learn More feature to better understand the measures listed. Both vets and grantee staff can edit this module. See the View or Manage Budget section of the VGRS Grant Recipient User Guide on the DOL VGRS website for instructions on what to input for your grant's planned and actual budget amounts in the system. And I believe, there you go, Kate has shared the desk guide. That's not the user guide. But the user guide. Jay, can you share the VGRS site, please? Just so people can access.
I just put
there
the link in the chat, Tara.
Thank you. And so you can just go to the view or manage budget section to just follow along if you would like more information about the budget module. But in this module, we have our instructions, we have our 2 categories of planned with the related plan table, our Learn More, our actual with the related actual table. And as you can see, it spans from PY 2025 into PY 2027, and I will explain the columns in a bit. We just have these 2 categories. There's nothing else. I can't scroll any further. And our managed budget is more or less the same. This just shows the table a little easier than it does in managed budget, because once I start inputting data, it gets wider. So I'm just going to stay in this view for a little bit before I move to managed budget. But in the managed budget, or no, in the view only budget screen, we can see every year grouped up. So we have our PY 2025 quarters 1 through 4. Then we have that total for that year. And then it's the same exact thing for PY 2026 quarters 1 to 4. Then we have our total for that year, PY 2027 quarters 1 to 4, and our total for that year, then the POP overall totals. And for some of them, it's not applicable, so you'll see blanks, and those sections will, actually it's not blanks, these dashes indicate that there's nothing applicable in that section in that cell. So you won't ever be able to input data, nor will data be calculated in those dash cells. And so the purpose of this is financial, physical, items are done by the by the year, so that's why we broke it up. And like, because you're getting incremental funding by the year, it's just easier to keep track. And one of my favorite features of these modules is both planned and actual have this carryover ability. So you can see right here it says carryover amount. It's not applicable in your first year because you have no pre-existing money to be carried over. Your money starts in 2025 because it's your first award year. So, but it does start showing up in PY 2026 and PY 2027, and this carryover amount actually pulls from your actuals, and it's really fun. So in a second, I'm going to manage budget once more, but whatever is remaining in my, sorry, let me have it shown. There you go. Whatever remains from my total from 2025, and we'll play around with that. Although we're focused on Q1, I just want you guys to see that number and then see how it actually pulls into both the planned and into our actuals, and how you get to plan your next year's budget with that in mind. And let me go to the summary really quick and just copy what is the cost, because it's one thing I didn't pay attention to in my notes. So let me do that and return. So now we are at our budget. I'm going to input that number I copied into my budget module, both in the planned and actuals, and just show you an example of how it changes over the quarters. So copied over, and I'm just going to copy it over into my actual as well. And you can see that the system is loading to expand it. And okay, so we're going to start off in our plan section. So you can see total planned award amount, our carryover amount, which once again is not applicable to year one, but we can see it occurring already because you see how it says $374,614. That is because in our actuals, we have not spent any of that money, and that is what is actual remaining funding amount for that year. And that's what gets pulled in. But okay, so we are going to say, dang, because I didn't track this. It's like I did it myself. I didn't track it. Let me quickly get a calculator and divide this into 4. Okay, so 93,653. So I'm just gonna say, for whatever reason in this first quarter we went through 90,000 even, and then the $3,653, that's not 50 cents, is our first quarter spendings, or that maybe that's what we planned. Maybe that's how we planned it. Actually, I'm gonna change it. The next year's 80, and then here 13. Why am I not just copying this? Oh, there you go. There you go. So there you go. So once the system processed it, it saw that my plan and intention is to zero out that full amount. So that is what our plan shows. So in our plan, by the end of PY 2025, we zero out and use up all of that initial, funding amount, that first year funding. And that is our plan. I'm going to keep I'm gonna say maybe we start off this way and this indirect cost down below. So, and then just keep it the same for the rest of them. So do that, paste that. You can already see, no, 3,000, there you go. That's the difference. So we're gonna have a difference of 40,000 between the two, because that was delivered on my end. I wanted to show you leftovers, or not leftovers, carryover amounts. So in this actual year, we had input our actual direct costs, ended up being 80,000 across the year, and then for whatever reason, our actual indirect costs were under 4,000 across the year, and that totals up to us. That leaves $40,000 of grant funds that we haven't used. So in the system, it's going to show you that, and it carries that amount over both in the actual and in our plan section. So we can be mindful and realize, hey, we have this much coming in this year. So therefore, our total planned funding amount for this year is $414,614. So it just helps with planning, and hopefully not mixing up or confusing like the funding purposes or just budgeting better. But I'm sure that you guys have some great software to help you guys, or just processes, but it's a great way to look at it though. Gonna go ahead and submit that so we can see it on our view only view. There you go. So you can see once you hit submit in this system means submit to save. It does not mean submit to vets, just so you're aware, unless it specifically says submit to vets. And that is something we're going to go into great detail in tomorrow, when we go into our performance reports and create them and start submitting one for this grant, one for the other grant. You'll see that. But in the system, all of our forms, when you see submit, it's submit to save, and it saves and updates your data with whatever you had input. So we can see in our plan, once again, we plan to zero out our funds, while in our actual, we ended up being 40,000 short of it, or we didn't spend 40,000 like we had initially planned. So that is our budget module. And once again, to learn more is here. You can scroll through and just learn more. That carryover amount is the unexpended funds from the previous program year available to expend in the subsequent program year. And that's why first year doesn't have it. And that is it for our budget module. Going to go back to our slide deck. Next, we have our personnel module. The personnel module provides a period of performance view of the grant's positions and employees' time allocation for those positions across all 12 quarters of the grant. This module calculates actual percentage of time, the POT, from the position, actual staff percentage of time from the position's approved percentage of time. So vets and grantee staff can both update this module. You just have different items you can update. Vet staff can manage the different positions listed and positions approved percentage of time, while grantee staff can manage the employee information listed per position. And you can see the view or manage personnel section of the VGRS grant recipient user guide on the DOL VGRS website for instructions on how to input employee percentage of time into the system. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into our personnel module. I did not load funny. As a grantee staff user, I do have the related action of manage personnel, as you can see here. We do have our instructions. I can hide those if I want. I can come down, and in our personnel section, we have I guess you could say a section for each position. So we have number 1 for our grant director position. And at this time, because this is a new grant, it is vacant. Yesterday, you may recall, I had people in here. We're going to go and input people ourselves because it's supposed to be a first year grant. It didn't make sense for me to have data in already when we're going in to manage it. So I went and deleted all those people. But you can see our vet staff had gone in and not only created this position, all the subsequent positions. They had input the position title, they had input the position approved percentage of time on a quarterly basis. And that is all they can do. When we go to manage personnel, we cannot, well, they can also delete positions should they so need to, but as a grantee user, I cannot do any of those. However, as a grantee user, I can go into manage personnel and go in and add a staff member per position as appropriate. And we will see an example of that shortly, but I did want to just show you guys. So we do once again have each position. So within this box, we have a number per position. Number 1 for this grant is the grant director. At the time, our status is vacant, but once we input our information, you will see that status change. So in our staff actual percentage of time, we have our employee name, and in here in our tooltip, it says enter the employee's first name and last name. Entries must be distinct. Therefore, if you have, say, 2 John Smiths in your organization, please add in their middle initial if possible, or some other identifier, like say one is John Smith Sr. and the other one Jr. Have those different identifiers, essentially. It's easier for you to track, it's easier for us to track. We have the start date, and that is entered in the date the employee first charged hours to the position. The start date is entered only once per employee for the position. And then the end date. If the employee has stopped working in this position, enter the last date of work. Otherwise, leave blank. And in this demonstration, I'm going to include an example in which we can see an employee like stop working in one position, move up, and I'll show you an example just so you can see that. I'm not sure if that is a use case, but I just wanted to show you guys like how we could break off and start. So we have our second position, outreach manager. We have different position approved percentage of times. This one's also vacant. We will fix that. We will correct it. But yeah, so that. Oh, I didn't cover this. So the percentage of time metrics, this is also important. This shows deviation within, if there's any deviation within your personnel module, specifically per position. Red, which you don't see now because they are vacant, but what are deviations or vacancies requires explanation, the performance report narrative. And the only reason we don't have red yet for any of these is because we're still in the first quarter. So we're fine right now. But in our other example, actually, I can show you guys the better example grant for this. So on this one, because this is a grant that has existed, I've got the data. You could see we have a transition occurring for the position. So Jacob is our outreach supervisor up until pop quarter 9 of this grant, and he started transitioning out, or maybe he's working on a secondary grant, and so Dan P is assisting. And this all sums up to our 100%, and that's why we're fine. Meanwhile, you can see in here, we actually do have that red vacancy, that deviation occurring. We have that color code, and that is because this occurred last quarter. Therefore, it is past that time, and therefore nobody can join since then, unless I go in and manage it and I forgot to add somebody or forgot to add their hours, which is the case here, and we will be updating it together. But you can see the vacancy being flagged, and this is going to be something I would have to speak to in our performance report narrative. And we will be speaking to that when we do create our narrative, just so we can see that. But for now, you can see the positions are staffed, though, is just missing my hours. My input of the percentage of time to show that hours have been completed, but otherwise it's flagged. And we can see, we can just go down. We have our other positions. There's nothing here, therefore it is flagged once more, and so forth. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually manage this personnel. And because we know that this is a Q4 for 2024 grant, we need our hours in. So I'm gonna say Jacob probably took back over on this grant, and he actually, make that 90, 10, and I will give an end date for Dan earlier into the quarter. So the quarter ends till June 30th. So we're gonna say April 04, maybe 20, 25. And that's why he's only at 10%. Jacob went and completed that. So we're staffed here, but then this adds up to the acceptable or the approved 100%. So we are good. We no longer have a deviation. We no longer have a flag, and I do not have to speak on the outreach supervisor position in our narrative when it comes to that. I may have to speak on the other ones, but not for this one. So for our accountant, I'm gonna say maybe this was a mistake. He worked 5% on that because he actually left our organization. So that would be January. Let's say January 15, 2025. So it's that 5%. It's the only time he managed to allocate, and we hadn't been able to hire an accountant then. So we're gonna have these two deviation blocks. One being for the actual deviation. We got approved for 25%. This is greater than a 10% difference. So not a 10% difference. What is that actual? Here we go. The deviation from position approved percentage of time is calculated as total staff actual percentage of time minus the position approved percentage of time for the quarter. Requires explanation when variance meets or exceeds plus or minus 10%. So that is what's happening here. He only did a 5% of work, so that's a 20% difference. Therefore, I will have to speak to that, but we're fortunately not going to be submitting that this time, but we will be submitting this one because it remained vacant. A thing to note is if your employee has an end date, if I try and go and say maybe he came back for this one quarter to help us finalize, you're going to get this red validation error message. So it's going to tell you a value may be provided only for quarters between the employee's start and end date because he left within this quarter that he is able to have an input for this quarter, but you cannot have it beyond that. So that brings me up back here. So Dan here, if you guys recall, joined 2024. While Jacob had been here since 2022, so that's like a big difference. So we can go and see 2024, but if we go and try to input anything in 2023 or 2022 for Dan, I'm gonna go ahead and put 50 here. It's gonna give me that same validation error, and it's gonna automatically calculate a deviation because 100 plus 50 makes for a positive. No, not positive, but like a 50% difference, which is too great, and beyond that, plus or minus 10% threshold. So this is an error both ways. When an item, be it here, be it in your budget, I don't think has those errors unless you try to input 1 million, then that's the only time it will validate. I think in your participants or enrollments forms, if you input something that is not acceptable, it will not submit. So if I try to save this form as it is right now, submit once more in forms means submit to save. So if I try to submit this, it's gonna flag me back up here that I need to fix this before it will save this because there's a clear error and the system does not want to display that error. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear that out. So if I hit submit, we should be brought back to the view only. Yes. So you can see we were brought back to the view only. We do not see 150% here. We do not see that error here, but we do have this corrected. So we have that final Q4 input, and we do have this corrected, so that's great there. We do have Suki's transition out, and then we haven't had anybody else hired since, so unfortunately we do have to speak to that, and in the previous quarter we spoke to this. And then here we're seeing a flag here that maybe when Nora signed off, she didn't have anybody to hire on and so forth. But here we do need to input that, and I will do that before we leave this module. So, but I do advise when you go into the system for the first time and you're updating your personnel module, you do read this off. This is pretty great, and the examples we provide are pretty great as well. So, if you can't like figure it out yourself, it's just whatever hours the employee charged in that quarter divided by 520 will give you a number, and then you get that decimal, multiply it by 100, and it gives you this, and that number is your quarters percentage of time for that staff member. So we do have the three examples like that, and then a fourth that just explains vacation time and incorporating counting that as 100% as well. But there is a call to action to contact your coder for assistance on how to calculate and report fringe benefits. So I do advise you do read the instructions whenever you have the chance, but for the most part, a lot of these pages and modules are self-explanatory after you go through it at least once. Once you like read through it, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to just complete this for the sake of our training. Just to say 75 and then we're done. Right? Yeah, good. So submit to save. Because we do have the one to speak to. Okay, good. Okay, so that is our personnel module. I'm going to take us to the next module. That is our grantee user access module. This module lists all grantee staff users with access to this grant. These users can view the grant record and edit or manage certain modules, such as the budget, personnel, participants, and performance reports. The coder can add or remove grantee staff users to the grant record. So once again, you can use this page, the grantee user access module, to determine if there's users here that are no longer relevant to your grant. Jay or Jacob, if you guys have the 2022 grant open, can you do me a favor and remove all of my Yopmail training accounts, please, just so I can show them. So like, for example, we're going to say in this example, I noticed we had 3 staff members that are no longer associated with our organization, let alone the grant, and you go and email them. You reach out to your coder, you request that they go and update the grantee user access list because, this is eating up 3 licenses for your grant. You can have up to 4 other people added to this grant. And that is why I'm going to perform my due diligence and request that my coder, in this case, Jay or Jacob, go and remove these 3 Yopmail accounts because this is our test grant. Please just let me know when you get that done. We can do it after. I can return to it if needed. But yeah, because once again, you're limited to 6 users, and it doesn't make sense for you to have additional users that will not be assisting with the performance inputs. So 1 second. Done. Okay, perfect. I was informed it was done. We're going to refresh, and you can see, there you go. We're down to 2, and then if I needed my other 4 staff members to get access, we send them that new user registration request guide, and they get to perform the necessary steps so they can be added here too. Here, once again, also your coder is the one that provisions access. So after you submit your request and you see that once again, you don't have your grants down here. And then when you check your user profile, you don't see an organization name that gives you the solution, or not, that gives you what they need to perform in order to give you this correct access. So in this case, there's nothing that needs to be done, but in your case, if you go to your user profile and you see nothing for grantee organization grant, you will need to inform your coder that they need to give you grantee organization membership and grantee user access to your grant records, and that should hopefully remind them of the steps they need to take. We have trainings for them for that, so hopefully the words trigger what is needed to perform the necessary updates. I'm going to close this tab. Sorry, I have this thing in my way. Let me remove it. And then grant user access. That's it. Okay, perfect. Once again, thank you, Jay, for updating this so I can show that off. Now we are going to move into our next slide, and that is the participants module. There's a lot to cover here. It's actually a pretty fun module. What I think I'm going to do is go over both the slides for participants and for enrollments. Then I will go and explore both of them with you guys. So our participants module, this includes a participants form, which requires the entry of demographic and military service information before an enrollment can be created. Enrollments are created under each participant. A participant can have multiple enrollments, but the service start date of the subsequent enrollment must be at least 90 days after the previous enrollment service end date. Users can explore the data via nested or tabular views. Data can be exported into an Excel file for each of the tabular views. So grantee staff can, as grantee staff, you guys actually own this module. All data that is input is completely owned by you. However, all users with grant access can see the inactive participants notification with this module. So like, although you guys manage this module, everybody can see that indicator that shows that you're you're going beyond that 90 days of activity, or I should say inactivity, and therefore you have enrollments that are required to be exited out or have their trainings and services received updated appropriately. So if you want to see more information about the participant section, you can do so on the VGRS Grant Recipient User Guide on the DOL VGRS website for instructions on how to navigate and input participant data in the system. So a disclaimer, VGRS is a performance reporting system. We are not a case management system. Grant recipients should maintain case files on their participants independent of the data entered in VGRS. Okay, so, and then I think I have a second slide. Yes. Okay, so navigating the participant enrollments modules. In the tabular view, you have the participants list, and in the managed view, it actually matches your nested view. I'm so sorry, I don't know why I said tabular. Your managed view matches your nested view, and you will have your participants listed out with all of the inactive ones first. That is the default sort on this page, and I can show you guys, walk you through that. But so this link that you can see right here will only open a view-only version of the participant information, which is what we call the nested form. Do not click here if you intend to edit any participant or enrollment information. You need to click one of these in order to update information. So the pencil means you get to update the participant. The clipboard means you're managing their enrollments, and the red X means you get to remove or delete the participant. And do we have anything else? And then so this is, I can just go through that myself. Let me just make sure. Yeah, okay. So the enrollments module training section. The enrollments form has a training section that captures the participants' training, if any, from service start to service end. Rows can be added by selecting the plus add training link below the grid. Entries can be removed by clicking on the red X to the right of the desired row. Training entries are required only when a row has been created. Therefore, if no training rows have been created, the form may submit to save as long as all other required rows have correct inputs. If a training row has been created but no data has been input, the enrollment will not submit to save. And then we do have a few additional slides. I thought it was like 2, I forgot. Enrollments module, the training fields, the information captured per training row is as follows. We have the training type, number of hours, start date, end date, the program year completed, quarter completed, and notes. If a participant's training is longer than 90 days, enter the start or end dates and number of hours that fall within the first quarter of training and create a new row for the dates that fall within subsequent quarter, and so on until all dates are aligned to their respective quarters. And we will perform an example of this. I know that's a little too much. Goodness. Okay, I'm gonna go over all of this in the demo as well because it's a lot of information. So this is the services received. We're going to talk about the services received section of our enrollments module. The enrollments form has a services section that captures the participant services received from service start date to service end to include any follow-up services provided up to 4 quarters after exit. Rows can be added by selecting the plus add service received link below the grid. Entries can be removed by clicking on the red X to the right of the desired row. Services received entries are required only when a row has been created. Therefore, if no services received rows have been created, the form may submit to save as long as all other required rows have correct inputs. If a services received row has been created but no data has been input, the enrollment will not submit to save. And then we have the associated fields with the services received section. Entries are to be added, updated for each service type per reporting quarter completed. The information captured per service is as follows. Service type, we have the date received, the PY completed, quarter completed. Those 2 completed ones are automatic calculations, and a notes at the end of the table. You only need to enter or edit the most recent date services were received for each service type within a quarter. For example, if you provide job search assistance to a participant on August 25th, 2025, PY 25 Q1, and again on September 4th, 2025, PY 25 Q1, you only need to enter the 9/4 date received. The system will tell you the quarter when you enter the date received. You can edit an existing service type entry or create a new row as needed. And then I think that might be it. No, we have exits. Okay. Exit section. We have 2 more after this, or 1 more after this, and then we are going to do the demo, and we're actually going to go through. We have examples, so we're going to go through live together. Exit section collects the information related to a participant's enrollment ending. The exit may be due to having been placed into employment or any other reason for exit. This section collects trackable measures regarding housing status at exit, information about the placement and/or reasons for exit. Fields are not required until a service end date has been input. The service end date is the date the participant received their final HVRP service that was not self-service, information only, or a follow-up service. The source is your HVRP glossary of terms, specifically your service end date. term. So when a selection is made for the place and employment field, which is located in the placement information subsection, the system will display conditional requirements depending on the answer for placement. And then we have, I believe, one more. Lastly is our follow-up section, the enrollments form. The follow-up section will appear once the service end date has been input. This section collects the participants' post-exit employment information. Follow-up activities are recorded for 4 quarters after the participant's exit quarter until the end of the grant's period of performance. Dates to determine each of the follow-up quarters after exit are calculated based on the service end date. And with that, I am going to shift back into our grant, and I need to actually find my examples. There we go. So here we go. I am going to, are we able to share attachments before I sign?
It
Screen
looks like it. I will attempt to see if we
Is it-
can. Looks like maybe it is not allowing me to attach.
Okay, so what I'll
unfortunately.
do is just side by side it then. That's what I was planning to do, but I didn't want to just assume. Okay, so first things first, we're going to go into our grant. Let me just confirm one thing really quick. This is for the wrong grant. Okay, so this is going to be for this grant, so we're going to do that. Okay, so this is our 2025 grant. As you can tell here, 2025, or the first two is your initial award year. That's why 2025 and 2022. I can easily make that difference. But okay, so this is our 2025 grant. I'm going to go ahead with our example participant, Boba Fett, into this grant. I'm going to go into our participants module and manage. I thought first. Okay, so the enrollment. Okay, I got it. Okay, never mind. We're gonna go ahead and manage our participants. Oh, actually, let me close this let me full screen this so you can actually see this entire screen. But as you see, we're in our participants module. In our participants module, as a grantee staff member, I have the related action of manage participants. And when I click that, I can actually manage. And if you guys recall the slide with the buttons, I will go through that once we get there. But I do want to just tell you about the components of this page. We have our instructions, and it gives you also instructions on how to toggle between the two views, and that those views being nested and tabular. Once again, this view, which currently has nothing in it, but we will change that in a second, is called the nested view because that allows you to click the participant and then the form shows up at the bottom of the table, showing you like the form view. And then tabular, however, when you click that, show tabular view, which is on the upper right-hand side of your participants list, just above it, I should say. It shows you the tabs with the different various components broken down, and you're able to export from these tables. So we are going to not focus on that for now. What we are going to do is go and create that participant that I had shown you very quickly on the right side of my screen. But before we get to that, we're going to go click on manage participants just so we have the width so we can see something. Our instructions do note what the different icons mean. So if you ever forget what that one slide said, let me find a slide really quick. Yeah, this slide, like if you ever forget what these mean, you don't have to necessarily hover over them. Our instructions indicate that. So to edit, you just click on the pencil. Unfortunately, we don't have any participants to see them, but we will see them shortly. But to manage, you click to manage enrollment. You click on the clipboard, and to remove, you click on the red X. Once we create Boba Fett, you will see that live here. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and select this. So actually before I select this, I do want to know you can filter or you can search, you not filter, but you can search your participants grid. I don't remember at the top of my head what is the max shown. I think it's like 25 or something. I could be wrong, and we can find that out when we go into the 2022 grant. But you can, the great thing is if you recall like somebody's last name, that first 4 letters of their last name or something, you can type it up here and it will filter out and show you the related participants. So you're able to target whoever's form you're like in your case management app, or however you're performing your case management, whoever's form you have to be looking at. You don't have to go through and just go only the ones that have the inactive participant indicator warning on them. You can go through and search for who you're going through in your system and just like match that here. But that being said, I'm going to go ahead and finally create our new participant. Going to side screen this. Where is our, oops, there you go. Why is it like that? There you go. Okay, so hopefully you're able to read both of these. Otherwise I have no idea what to do, but I'm hoping you can. So here we are in our create participant because this is a brand new participant, therefore I need to create them. I'm not editing, I'm creating. Form, and in that we have instructions. As always, we have our section. So section 1 is the personal information. This is like demographic level information, and in section 2 is our military service information, and hopefully they correspond pretty one-to-one. We're going to find out shortly. So first things first, if you guys have custom identifiers made either through your system or you guys have your own system that you create them, you can go ahead and input your custom identifier, and that is something else you can use to search your participants up with. But you must absolutely not use PII to do so. So it cannot be a personally identifiable information. No, I don't know. I don't even remember what PII stands for. But this is supplementary identifier to facilitate tracking a participant across system. So you can like one-to-one easily track whatever your case management app is and what we have. Okay, so we're gonna come down. We see that this is our participant. He is Boa Fett. He has no middle initial, so we know that the first initial is gonna be B. Our middle and the tooltip. If you tab through, like I just did, when I tabbed out of the B, it automatically went to the tooltip, so automatically showed me what it means. It says enter asterisk if the participant has no middle name. So that is great. We have no middle name, we can bypass that. And then I don't know why it dragged me up, but our last name, more or less the same. Enter the first 4 characters of the participant's last name. So this participant only has 4 letters, so we're just gonna go ahead and input the whole thing. So our birth date, we have 09/01/1966. You could type it in that way, or you can use this little calendar feature, and it is kind of cool, but it's also kind of annoying just for anybody that does use it. Let me clear it out. Let me show you why. So the thing is, maybe it's just a me issue, but I will, like, what I do is I will typically do the month and year, and right now, as you can see, I'm starting off with the year first. I will forget to click anything here, and that is my issue here, and then it just like bypasses, or if I already have the date, like maybe if I went 9/1 from this year and then went back in a year, it sometimes changes. So that is just a shortcoming, just a note on my end, but do pay attention to that. In this case, we would so from there it automatically populates the age, and the age becomes a part of the identifier along with their name. So our participant identifier is the short grant number, the first 4 letters of the last name, the first initial, the middle initial, the age, And then last thing would be the military entry date. So those are all things that you can use to search when you're in that participant's form to easily find whoever you need if you don't have a custom identifier. You cannot search, like, say, the discharge date or something else because it's not part of the identifier. Therefore, it's not something that will be filterable. And it's not listed in that table. Another thing to note is that this birthday is only viewable by you. Vet staff cannot see the birthday. They can see the age, however, because this is PII. So next we have our highest education level. You can see here on this side on the tracking sheet, we see no educational level completed. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Next we have sex, and here he is a man. So we're going to go ahead, select male. And then our next one, ethnicity or race, select all that apply. In this case, we have Hispanic or Latino selected and Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So Hispanic or Latino, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. And I know it's kind of tight here. That's because our screen's been shrunk. And actually, I could probably force it. There you go. We're forcing it into tablet or phone view, so that's why we can actually read it now, but that's why it was a little messy before. But now I can actually read my choices and white isn't floating away, so hopefully you guys can see this. If you guys need me to zoom in more, please post in the chat and I can try and address that.
Katira, Michael wants you to explain the customer identifier again and if it's a required field.
Okay, so the custom identifier is completely optional. This is only if you have a system on your end, a case management system on your end that has identifiers that you use to track participants. Like, say for this example, like you see how it's NZ2112. That is what you can input. So this information helps you search and hopefully manage your participants and enrollments easier. It's whatever that you guys need. You just cannot use PIIs. Okay, so
Pat, this is Kate. I just wanted to let you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take screenshots of each page and put that in the chat so people can click on those. If you click on the screenshot, you're able to open it up and see the entries and follow along. So that way you can go full screen on the system side.
Thank you. Let me just bring this up then. Gosh. Let me move it here and we're going to full screen this. Thank you. There we go. So now we can actually read it better. So we've done ethnicity and race. We're going to go ahead and move into disability status. So in this case, our participant has no disability, so we're going to go ahead and click none. However, if you're unsure of, like, say, what the difference is between disabled and special disabled, we do have the learn more feature, and you can go and just scroll and read to better understand the disability status field. A thing I just realized I didn't note as of yet is that all of the blue asterisk fields are required. So if I were to go without selecting his sex or ethnicity, race, that would be fine because they're not required fields, while the birthday, the highest level, the highest education level, the disability status, and all of the name related fields are required. And that's why we have that bypass for middle initial if none exists, because if they don't have anything, you have to put something in, and that is a bypass, that is acceptable bypass. We've gone ahead and done the personal information section, which was section 1. We are going to go ahead and jump into section 2, which is our military service. So for this participant, we have listed that he is from the Space Force, which fits perfectly. And then we have the military service component of active duty. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. If I was tabbing through this once more, everything that has a tooltip, it would go to the tooltip before it gives me the field itself. but you can go anything with a tooltip, just review what it says. Like for this one, if I didn't know what the difference between active duty, guard, and reserve were, right here it informs me what to select if needed. So select active duty as a participant served at least 1 day of active duty to include time spent in basic training. If selecting guard reserve, the participant must have been federally activated for duty, not including inactive duty. So for this is something I suggest you guys read at your own time. So I'm gonna go ahead and just select active duty for the sake of this demonstration because that is what we've determined, and need to briefly skip the military entry and discharge dates on the form just so I can make sure I'm going through this form properly. But like the discharge status is bad conduct, so we selected that. And then the military entry date on our form was 02/28/1986. And this has a validation. So if I go ahead and when was he born? So 1966. So this would make him around just under 2019 when he entered the military. If I was to change that to 83, that should give me a validation error and tell me that the military entry date I had provision is too low. So we know that was a mistake on my end, and we're going to go ahead and correct that. But if I were to keep this and I attempt to submit to save it, because we have that red validation box, it's not going to let me save it. Well, that, and because I have one more outstanding required field, but it will not allow me to save it because of this too. Let me fix it back to 1986. So our next date is military discharge date, and in our form we have 06/15/1990. There we go. And then our last requested piece of information is the period of military service. So 1986, 1990, that follows under the after Vietnam War, or Vietnam era and before Gulf War era. So yeah, there you go. So, and then we can submit. But I'm going to go ahead, bring it back to the 83 example once more because this makes them under 17, I think, based off the just really quick math, and submit this. But whatever it is, it's under the eligible date and I can't save it. So we correct that. We're going to go ahead, submit now. And now we have him. So now that we actually have our participant, I can just show you how, like if I were to type in a custom identifier, I wish we had more in this example, in his search, it would only return him. If I were to type just his last name, knowing that it's Fed, hit search, it would only return him. I can't really do this example, I realize, on this grant, but I can on the 2022 grant because I have a lot of dummy data. So I'll get back to that. But I do get to show you guys the buttons again. So once more, our pencil corresponds with editing a participant. Our clipboard corresponds with managing enrollments for a participant. And then our X corresponds with removing a participant from the grant. We obviously don't want to do X, so I'm not going to do that. But I believe if you click this, there is a second pop-up. Yeah, to confirm. Okay, good. I was getting scared for a second. But there's always, usually anytime you're trying to delete something in the system, we want to make sure that was your intention. So we will have this pop-up kind of request and confirm with you that do you truly wish to delete Boba Fett from your participants? And we're going to say, no, I accidentally misclicked and I meant to do the clipboard instead and accidentally clicked that for some reason. So we bypassed, we evaded deleting him accidentally. So I'm going to go ahead this time, go into our enrollment form. So I clicked on manage enrollment, which once again was our clipboard. And because he is a brand new participant, he does not have any enrollments listed yet. But in our form that Kate has so kindly shared in the chat, we do have an enrollment listed, and so I'm going to go ahead and start inputting that information. So I'm going to go ahead and click this enter new enrollment button. And together we can start inputting this form. So this is, since it is a brand new enrollment, it is create enrollment for the participant, and you can confirm that this is the participant I wanted. In our example, this is the only participant, so we know for sure this is the one that we want to add the enrollment for, but it does give you that chance to be like, oh no, wait, this isn't the correct participant, and you could just scroll down and hit cancel. But in our case, it is the correct participant, so we do not need to do that. And we can see in our form, as always, we have our instructions. We can collapse them if we don't want them. We can open it back up if we do need them, but it is there to guide us. Our first section of our enrollment is just enrollment information, which is basic, and it is our service start date. This date is very important. I'm going to actually read the tooltip for you guys because this is a question we have received. So the service start date needs to be the date that the participant first received qualified, meaning not self-service, informational, or follow-up, grant-funded services or trainings for this enrollment. So I am going to put a date here. I am going to put a date that actually differ. No, actually, I can't put it. Yeah, so I'm just gonna put the date that we actually have listed for now, and then I will return and show why it's very important and why it may or may not be a flag in the future. So I'm just putting in a date because it's 2025 grant. Unfortunately, I don't have much room to play with. And then we're gonna jump into section 2. So section 2, we have our partner services or programs. This is pretty self-explanatory. He is also enrolled in the supportive services for veterans families, the SSVF rapid rehousing, our age or prevention program. And then he's also partnered with the American Job Center. So we're going to click both of those and we are good to scroll down. Let me actually scroll down to other form 2. So the next is our eligibility section. For eligibility, first check to see if a participant meets the eligibility requirements for homeless. So if yes, select this category. If no, consider all other eligibility categories. So that's a part of the tracking sheet. Just reading that in case you guys haven't seen it, but our eligibility for this participant is that he is participating in a qualifying partner service or program. So we're good there. We're ecstatic. We can scroll my PDF. Our next question, our field is housing status and enrollment. And for Boba Fett, he is in sheltered, homeless, or temporary supportive housing. He does not have children, so no. And he is not episodically homeless, so no. So next we have our location. As you recall earlier, when we were in our grant summary dashboard, I mentioned that SD is very important, making sure it's correct because that is where you're going to pull information from. In this 2025, this is the 2025 grant. I think it is. The 2025 grant, we have two. Yeah. So we have two states in our SDAs. And so like, for example, say if your grant only showed Virginia and you have Virginia, Maryland, like this example does, you do need to make sure you inform your coder and that gets adjusted as correct as necessary, because otherwise you won't be able to input the appropriate location where services were provided for this participant. But okay, so in location we have for Boba Fett, we have listed Maryland, we have listed Anne Arundel, and then Annapolis. With the zip code 21401. So we're gonna go ahead and input that information. we do have the link to living wage calculator, so you can easily find this information out. Fortunately, very thankfully, on my tracking form, we have this listed, so I don't need to explore right now, but I can actually just click it really quickly just so you're aware. But you can go, the MIT has this great living wage calculator in which you can go to your state and then it gives you the counties and then you can like find out what the living wage is, or if you know the city itself, like the metropolis area, you can just type in Annapolis, Maryland. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it's not considered a metropolis. Well, I get it's a small city. Okay. Well, in our example, Maryland, there you go. Where's Anne Arundel? And then there you go, 2768. So that was just really poor example on my part, but it works as it's supposed to. In the employment history, we have two questions. We have the number of days employed below county living wage, and we also have the number of days unemployed. For this participant, unemployed is 60 and employed below is 30. Okay, so just slightly different. And then in training, we do have the HVRP glossary of terms if you need training type definitions, but in training, as mentioned in our slide deck, you need to click the add training button in order to add rows. And if I was to try and submit this form as is, because I have not input any of this information, and everything above is almost everything above, as long as it has this blue asterisk, it's required. I think the only two fields that are not required in this form from sections 1 to 5 are the city and zip code, but everything else is required. So please do be mindful. But so that is just to let you input and come back for the more detailed aspects if needed. But you must absolutely have trainings and services received in order for an enrollment to be considered true. That being said, because I have the training row added, it is required. If I go and try to just submit to save this for now, and like say I needed to take a break or something, I am able to do so because I filled out sections 1 of 5. Otherwise, we're gonna go back in. As you can see, I clicked the pencil because it was already created. I can go and edit it. I'm gonna come back into our training. I'm gonna go ahead, click add training, and on our first column, we have training type. And as you can see, these are the types of trainings we have. The HVRP glossary of terms will give you the definitions of the various training types. And for our participant, we have customized training, and we gave 4 hours of that on 7/15/2025, and end date, no end date, so it's on the same day, so 7/15/2025. So that is something you do have to do. You have to input the number of hours and the start and end dates for the training. In the deck, we had mentioned that if you have training that spans multiple quarters, you do need to split them and have the quarter breaks shown and allocate the appropriate hours for each one. Otherwise, the system will not let you add it because training cannot span more than one quarter when input in this, but you can have multiple training types. You can have multiple rows for that. So in this case, we have 2 other trainings provided. Hey, is it okay if I just make that 2? So this is what I'm looking at.
I was just gonna say we are at the last, like we have 20 minutes before the end, so I don't know if you wanted to kind of quickly finish this one up and go to the next one, or
Yes.
that's up to you. But I'll let you. Yep, that's fine. You don't have to do all of them.
Okay. I'm just gonna do this because I already have it open, and then that's 07/15/2025. Okay, and then we have that ended. Okay, good. We have any services? So a thing to know, services received, same thing. If you create the row, it is required. If I go and try and submit this now, it will flag that because I have created this row. If I I'm adding service received, I need to complete it. If I found out I actually don't need it, I can click on remove. If wanted, I'm just only gonna input one support service right now. Job placement type, job placement services, sorry, 8/5/2025, and that's it. So we're good there. And as I had mentioned earlier, the services received and trainings actually impact our enrollment start date. You can have if your first most available, what is it, service or training provided was a training, the service start date must match that first training start date. If it was a service received, this can be the first day of the service provided within a quarter. And in the example that we have here, you can see, say we didn't give this service more than once, we only gave it August 5th, then the first most applicable date would be this July 14th. But in this example, that 7-Eleven actually comes from a previous job placement service that was provided, then we did this. So this is fine and it works perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up. Do we have a service end date? We do. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish this one up. So 8/5/2025. Our housing status at exit is permanent supportive housing. And then our placement information, was he placed into employment? Yes. Placement type. Protective service. Oh no, this is full time, sorry. It's looking in the wrong order. It's the hourly wage 18 and then 33. Protective service. So it matches what we have in the form, and we also have the ONET online lookup. So if you just want to, you can search a number, like if I want to search for 33, I can do that. But okay, so we can go down here and no follow-up because it's the first quarter. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. We're going to move on to our 2022 grant, and I'm going to do our second example. Oops. Participants. Manage participants. Then let me actually open the second example on my end. There we go. And say I wasn't sure if we had our second example, I can go ahead and search him. So wind, we do not have wind, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and create him. So our second example, 701-898. This is gonna be Mace Windu from Star Wars, and he's a baby. 1990. Okay, so we're just gonna go through this kind of quickly because I do realize we're on a time crunch now. He is listed as having received a secondary school diploma. He is male. He is listed as being Black and Hispanic, so we got that. And then our disability status, we have special disabled. And once more, I can skip these two if needed because they do not have the asterisk, but we have the information, so it makes no sense for me to skip. So I'm going to go ahead, and his last branch of military service is Army. He was a guard. And then the military entry date was 08/14/2017. And then the military discharge date was 10/10/25/2022. And then the discharge date is honorable or under honorable conditions. And our period of military service for him was Gulf War Era 2. And submit. So now you can see, because we have multiple inactive participants, we don't really see him that quickly. And that is because this is the default filter for sorting participants, but that is the great thing of knowing that knowing his last name, so I can go and type wind and we got him, or if I just knew only his custom identifier, forgot his last name, but because we have our system and our case management system gives us that special number, I can also type that and it gives us him. So either way, easy to search and find people, specific people, instead of having to go through the list. We know he has an enrollment and we're going to go ahead and update that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on manage enrollments. We're going to go enter new enrollments and we're going to go and start working on his enrollment. So 3/14/2024. So that is our date. This is a Q3 grant. You can see. And we're gonna go down. He is not partnered with any of these. We're not gonna do that, but he is getting the American Job Center. So we're gonna scroll down to eligibility. So he is currently, his eligibility status is at risk of homelessness. In the form, we have permanent housing for his housing status at enrollment, and he has children. However, he is not episodically homeless. Our service delivery area, his state is Massachusetts because it's the one and only one we have. He is Hampshire and the city of Amherst with 01059 as a zip code. 671. We're just gonna go through breeze this part because the important part of this I just remembered is the follow-ups for this user. So for just participants, so I'm just gonna zip on through. We're gonna give him, he doesn't have trainings. We're gonna say he's received services. We're gonna give him 2 of them. So employment adjustment service. 4/15/2024. So for services received, you can only have one listed per service type per quarter. And that is why we ask that when you do so, you make sure when you input them, that you make sure that you only input the most recent date received. Because of that issue, because you can only get counted towards one of them, therefore in the system you only need to put one. And we request you just put the most recent one. 15/2024. Why did that scroll up? Here we go. And then, as you can see, he exited in March, but he keeps receiving supportive services. So that's great. And then in this case, housing status at exit, we are in permanent housing, sorry. And he has been placed in employment, yes. He's in 47. Instruction, we're going to say he is part-time and he's getting an hourly wage of 17. Wow. Okay, so, and then that's it for the exit section. Once again, we only have a follow-up section because I put that date in. If I didn't put that date in, the form ended at 8. So in our follow-ups, it shows in the first quarter after follow-up, he would end. I do 8 days, right? $2024. Oh, I think it's just a error on the form. Okay, so earned wages, yes, because on our form we could see 240 hours worked and he was making $17 an hour. So yes to the earned wages. Our second quarter after follow-up, if we look at the form, it says earned wages, yes, because he was working still in the construction, so 47. He worked 300 hours and it was still at $17 an hour. So that gives us our earnings for the quarter. Earned wages in the third quarter after exit, we have another yes. It is 300 hours at $17 an hour still. Oops, sorry. $17 an hour still, which gives us our wages for that quarter. And then lastly, our fourth quarter after exit, did he earn wages? Yes, once more. And this one, do we not have? Oh, there we go. It's in the next page. Okay, so it's still construction. And hours worked are 360 and $18 an hour, which increased his total wages earned. And then we're going to go ahead and submit this. So we can see we have our enrollment, he has a service end date, and we have the appropriate eligibility status. And as you can tell, we can add multiple enrollments per participant. It just has to be 90 days after that service end date. Otherwise, you have to reopen this and start adding the additional training services received into this enrollment. Because the system will not allow you to put it if it's too close together. And I think that is it for the form. Yeah, the form is done. So we are done with our participants module. However, I'm just gonna really quickly just show you the tabular view. Once more, like you can see, I can search, filter across all 4 tabs. So if I want to go to enrollments, I can search and filter as wanted. I can go and find our test participant and just confirm, like, we know he was AJC co-enrolled, we knew he was at risk of homelessness, had permanent housing, has children, is not episodically homeless, and so forth, and we can like confirm it at this level. We can export this if we want it, but once again, when you export to Excel, please note that this will only show whatever you have filtered and searched. So whatever you see in this table is what is going to be exported. So you can see it's only one entry. If I click this, open up the form, open up the Excel workbook, sorry, it's just going to show us that one. But if I removed him from the search, let the table refresh, and then hit the export, it's going to show me all of my participants. So that is the thing to note. Oh, well, their enrollments, I should say, their enrollment information. That is not services, trainings, or exits of follow-ups. But yeah, so that is just a thing to note, always consider, and it does show you the filter selected. So this one had no filters, but if I click this, I wonder if it shows you the search. Yeah, so search term, wind. So that is what I searched. That's how I got only him. And that is it for this. We're going to return to our deck so I can go through the rest. Where is, there you go. Okay, so we are going to go to our next module, which is outcomes. Here we go. So the outcomes module, this module pulls in data from the goals, budget, and participants and enrollments modules and calculates the goals versus the actuals to provide a preview of all key metrics for the grant. The percentage of cumulative goal achieved is displayed for each indicator. Only scored measures have a heat mapping color scheme. In the grant record, the scheme only colors up to the grant's current quarter. So in the example, the first example I'm going to show you is going to color up until the end because it's a 2022 grant. Therefore, we have completed and gone past pop quarter 12. Therefore, the whole row will be lit up. But in the first year, in the 2025 grant we go into, it's only going to color the first column. So pop quarter 1. Users can explore the data via all outcomes or scores focus views. Data can be exported into an Excel format for each of these views. All users with grant access have view-only access to this module and are requested to calculate the module every time you arrive at it. This module has no user input other than requesting the calculations. However, to note, you will not have much shown if you don't have your data input into the system. It's just how it works. If you have no data, you're not going to show any outcomes. Which fortunately, by the time that you guys are added, you at least have the goals data into the system. So it's unfortunately just going to show you negatives. But as mentioned, this is our 2022 grant, 2022. And if I go down, you're going to see it colored from end to end. So we're good. You can see how my grant has progressed. This is the full feature, so we can see all of our measures. And in most of the measures, it just like kind of gives you all of the relevant information. So you need quarterly before you could get to the cumulative. Then you have that goals versus actual outcome breakdown, which then is what this calculates, and it therefore calculates your performance. I'm just going to show this scores focus feature, and then we're going to move on to the next slide. So this is a scores focus one, which means everything that is relevant to your grant. So you're not going to see this one for a 2025 grant because it's not relevant to your grant, but it is relevant to this 2022 grant. Therefore, it is shown and it is highlighted as it's supposed to, because this is what you're getting graded on. So for this grant, you can see there's been some good quarters, some not so good quarters, and so forth. And anything that's yellow and red, you're going to have to speak to it in your performance report narrative. And you're going to see that tomorrow when we create the Q12 performance report for this grant. I'm going to jump into our 2025 grant really quick. Let me close this. And I'm going to show you the outcomes for that really quickly as well. So you have to recalculate outcomes. This is so every time you look at it, it is the most recent data. We realized if we gave you guys the chance to recalculate whenever you wanted, not many people did. A lot of people would get upset when the outcomes didn't reflect their actual performance. So this is to bypass that issue. And as I had mentioned, because this is only the first quarter of this grant, we only have the first quarter highlighted. And since we only have one participant, our scores are not that great, unfortunately. But that is our outcomes module. It's really cool. I suggest when you get on the system, after you've input data every quarter, you just look at it, explore it, and then based off of if this matches what your own data locally says, then that is the time to create your performance reports, because then that's how you know your data is correct and you're not going to be upset when you see the narratives and you see that you have to explain 3 different failings, as to why your goal is not met. Okay, that is our outcomes module. I'm going to go ahead and jump into our deck again. We are going to go into the demographic summary module. This module lists all enrolled participants and their related demographic information in both a table and chart format. Both table and chart provides a filter feature. The selection of a PY or quarter end will lead to the data to show the demographics of enrollments in relation to the selected PY quarter. Measures may be selected to change the chart's output to focus on a given measure's data points. All users with grant access have view-only access to this module. So nobody can go in and change your demographic summary unless they are changing your actual participants. But here we're going to go into your demographic summary. Once again, we have 4 different demographic types shown. We have age, we have ethnicity, race, we have disability, we have years since discharge. We do have that filter to focus on a specific year. This is our newer grant. It's not going to show us much. Let me go to the 2022 grant so it shows us more information. But like if I went to just like focus on 2024 alone, oh man, the one participant we added is the only 2024. So I'm going to do 2023 alone. We actually have data that you can look into and you can see like the breakdown of the various ages. And I'm going to go into ethnicity, race. One thing you need to know is when you go through the tabs, unlike the participants module, demographics module, the filter you selected will persist through tabs. It does not persist through tabs in the participants module. It does do that in demographic summary. So it is a thing to note, because if you're just like looking at this and off the top of your head, you knew you had like 50 something, the reason for that discrepancy is because your selected filter. So you can see 58 versus 30 something, 34 when I selected 2023. So that is a thing to note. The measures whatever measure has the I is what's going to be shown in the chart. And you are able, because you can see they're all they're links. You can click them and then it changes your table information to match your table. It changes your chart view to match your table. Sorry about that, misspoke. But and then you're able to filter or deselect people. So, or not people, demographics. So if I want to take out the ones that were 0, color code, oh dang. Let's do here 0, so Middle Eastern or Native Hawaiian. So I can go and do that because there's 0, I couldn't figure out what color they were, but there we go. It gave us like more room, more of a width for the rest of them. This cannot be exported in the same way with the default button, but I'm sure you could copy it or you could print a PDF or something if you wanted a copy of this. And I can click through any of the measures and it will show an update accordingly. So it is fun. I am going to jump back to my deck. We have the 2 last modules. I'll go through the module slides and just walk through them on the app itself. So our 2 last modules are the performance reports module and the history module. So performance reports module, this module lists all created performance reports and their submission statuses. The table provides a search and filter feature, and grantee staff manage this module, meaning you are the creators of the performance reports. Our last module is the history module. This module lists all updates made within the summary, goals, budget, personnel, and grantee user access modules. Updates to the participants and enrollments are not captured due to the high volume of edits in those modules. The table provides a search and filter feature. All users with grant access have access to the history module. So let's go back to our app, performance reports. This is going to be gone into great significant detail tomorrow, so I'm kind of glad that I just have the time to breeze through it. But we, as a grantee staff, have the managed reports related action. We have our instructions. We have our performance report list. And once again, we do have our filters and our search feature. We do not have the download because it makes no sense because you're not downloading the actual reports themselves. You're just downloading this table. So that's the only thing that's missing. But it's more or less the same table functions across most of the application, except for like what's in the goals and budget. But in this performance report list, I can easily see my submission statuses, so I can see how many draft reports were created for any given performance period and who's been creating them. And when they had been created. So these are all links to take you to their respective performance report records. And once again, that is going to be spoken to in great detail tomorrow. So I'm not going to touch on that, but that is what these links return to. Next and lastly is our history module, and this module does not have a related action button because it's just capturing any changes that have been made in all modules except for the participants and enrollments, because that way you can know or reference, be like, oh, did we not change that or something? And you can see the changes that were made. Like, for example, the grantee user access category, this occurred today because I had asked my training team, to go and remove the additional versions of me in this module. So that's why you see this listed. The personnel module, we had made those changes together. And yeah, that's why we have those, all 3 of those listed. So we're aware. We do have the search feature. I don't really find that useful, but the category, like if you're trying to see, like track the personnel module changes, you can just click on that. You can click budget changes and just track when it occurred.
And we are at time.
Excellent. I was going to say, and that is it. Thank you. Okay, and that is it for today. Tomorrow we are going to go into the performance report submission process and great significant detail. The validations involved with creating a performance report and all of that. It's going to be really fun. And hopefully we can end that at time or like earlier than time, but we appreciate you all taking your time to join us for today's session, and we hope to see you tomorrow.